felt violated, that I was doing, like I touched her breast and that I moved her underwear out of the way, and I'm like, yeah, I do that all the time.
He victimized, saying she should have said something sooner, but tried to argue that it's part of an understood medical procedure.
I'm not purposely trying to get arousal from doing any treatment. I mean, come on.
You hid for years behind Olympic rings and a Spartan head, but there is now nowhere left for you to hide, Larry.
I'm sorry.
I'm Andrea Munford.
Hi, nice to meet you, Larry Nassar.
Larry Nassar was a renowned figure in American artistic gymnastics. Gymnastics, like athletics or swimming, boasts a solid structure in the United States that makes it a world power. It is undoubtedly one of the bases of the acclaimed sports system of the North America giant. For this reason, the scandal began from the moment when Rachel Denhollander broke her silence and called into question the figure of Nassar and the organization of USA Gymnastics, one of the most powerful sports federations in the world. Denhollander's allegations gave way to one of the most painful storms ever to fall on the meaning of sports values. The focus was on Nassar, with a long career as a doctor behind him. Nassar's association with USA Gymnastics dates back to 1986, although it wasn't until 1993 that he graduated in medicine and laid the foundations for the work that he would do for the next decade. From 1996 to 2014, he was the medical coordinator for the United States women's artistic gymnastics team. For almost 2 decades, he treated hundreds of girls of different ages who years later followed Denhollander's path and ended their painful silence. Following Denhollander's complaint, hundreds of American gymnasts also denounced Nassar to uncover a sexual abuse scandal that lasted for almost 2 decades. On September 12, 2016, the release began. They accused Nassar of sexual abuse with the aggravating circumstance that they were committed when they were minors. To her surprise, that complaint did not remain an isolated case, but served to encourage several generations of American gymnasts who had grown up under the normality of Nassar's threat. Jeanette Antolin, Jessica Howard, and Jamie Dancer, 3 other gymnasts of the system, also made their nightmare public at the beginning of 2017, and even gave details that invited the public to think that Nassar was not the only piece that completely broke the puzzle of the American gymnastics system. Most of Nassar's abuses took place at the Carolii Ranch in Texas. Public complaints from various gymnasts about Nassar's practices began to pick up at cruising speed. At a time when a Hollywood sex abuse scandal was beginning to uncover, American gymnastics found the ultimate impetus to make its odyssey known to the world. The key was the denunciation of several of the stars of the American team in the 2010s. Michaela Maroney, who had announced her retirement in 2016, gave a boost to the fight by joining the tag Me Too to the complaints she made on social networks when she announced that she had also been a victim of Nassar. Shortly afterwards, she was joined by Ali Raisman, triple Olympic champion, as well as other great American international medalists. Simone Biles, the woman who had gone from being a great artistic gymnastics star to becoming a global sports icon, also revealed in January 2018 that she had suffered sexual abuse from Nassar. There are countless people who have achieved a lot of public attention through their notoriety. Larry Nassar, the infamous child molester, turns out to be one of those disreputable people. He held a prestigious position as a physician and osteopathic physician on the U.S. national gymnastics team from Michigan State University. His criminal act of sexual assault was cumulative and formed the basis of the United States gymnastics sexual abuse scandal. Larry was accused of sexually abusing more than 250 minors as well as young women. The number of his victims expanded to include a young man and a good number of popular Olympic gymnasts since 1992. The notorious child molester pleaded guilty to only 10 of these charges. His first verdict came in July 2017 when he pleaded guilty to child pornography charges and was subsequently sentenced to 60 years in federal prison. Larry Nassar pleaded guilty to 7 counts of sexual abuse of minors and received another sentence of 40 to 175 years in a Michigan State prison on January 24, 2018. He obtained an additional 40 to 125 years in prison on February 5, 2018, after owning up to 3 additional counts of sexual abuse.
Thanks for coming in so quick, too.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're not under arrest, so you can leave whenever you want. anytime we bring someone to interview room, we make sure that they know that. I know you talked to Val O'Brien.
In 2014, Amanda Thomashow, one of Nassar's victims, filed an official Title IX complaint against Nassar, accusing him of violating the school's sexual harassment policy. Michigan State University detective Valerie O'Brien had been assigned to the case. When Amanda spoke to the detective, she stated that it felt like an interrogation. In the end, O'Brien cleared Nassar of the report of sexual abuse. It was evident to Thomashow that they were not taking her seriously.
One of my colleagues.
Yeah,
a couple
wow,
years
man,
ago.
right,
Yeah.
right.
That was-
Okay.
What I want to talk to you is kind of go back to that situation. And I know that you guys had, sorry, papers all over, talked about maybe redoing some practices and things in relation to that. Reference that situation. What do you recall about that investigation?
The investigation report called Nassar's failure to communicate what he was doing troubling, but not a sexual harassment policy violation. Nassar was required to make minor changes to the sensitive medical procedures, which he explains here.
Right, that had, concerns over the form of treatment that I was doing, and that I talked about having to do the reasons why I did it, from a manual medicine standpoint. And there was a student that was in the room that had to leave to start because I was behind. We need to start another patient, and so we're like, always have another person in the room.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I've been trying to adapt my techniques so we won't get into the same situation.
Okay. What practices have you changed in response to
I've been trying to have people in the room,
Okay.
And trying obviously not to get into that same situation. You know what I mean? Like, has there been another complaint? I'm just like confused right now.
Well, we're kind of seeing what things have changed, what practices.
Okay, yeah. So I'm trying to do things where the difficulty is with the hands-on is I'm trying very hard to do things where I'm not being nearly as invasive, but it compromises things. So I am trying to modify that and having students there and having family members there, and I document in the chart, so-and-so's in the room, so my documentation's changed. I'm trying my best to do it over close, and that's sometimes the hard thing is the tightness, it's like the close gets in the way, but so I'm very, there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about that,
Yeah.
because that was a very scary thing, in my life, obviously. So, and I don't want to get into that. So I was like, oh my God, what happened? Like my heart is hurting. It's like, what the heck? So, I hope, that I've made the appropriate changes. Because it's, and I've done a lot of education. I'm really trying hard at educating so that and I always thought I was good at educating, but I'm trying to educate even more.
What do you mean by educating?
Explaining what we're doing.
To the patient
to
or
the patient,
others?
family,
Okay.
exactly.
All right. Have you had any instances where there hasn't been anyone in the room for an exam?
There'd be some on occasion, of course. You know what I
Okay.
mean? That just is the way that with medicine is now. It's difficult. You know what I mean? So yes, that has happened.
And what circumstances cause that to happen?
The patient is an adult, like she was too. But again, when I'm doing that, I'm trying not to do those techniques. You know what I mean? So, but I'm trying to, really trying to explain things. And I haven't had any complaints, you know what I mean?
During that technique, though, has there been situations where someone's not in the room?
I would probably, who's a doctor, you know what I mean?
You do that technique on?
She said it saved her career, you know what I mean? So she was just in today.
Larry had perfected his technique. He would have the girls change into loose shorts and lay down on the exam table. Larry would then drape them with the towel. Even when other people were in the room, he would ensure at least one of his hands would be hidden from the parents' view. The hand that was out of sight would be the same one to carry out the abuse.
Can you explain the technique? I know bits and pieces, but I'm not
and I sent her videos, too. I lecture on this. That's the thing that's frustrating. It's so, the sacrotuberous ligaments it runs from the pubic symphysis, the vesiform process. It's like the pelvic floor. Okay, you want to understand that stuff. So you're really coming in, and like the way to describe it, even in some of the videos is, it's like you go towards the labia and go lateral. So you're going in and apart. Okay, and then there's muscles that attach to the ligament, and so as you're treating that, you can feel the release, and that's a great teaching thing too. It's like I have the student feel their rib cage, okay, and then I go and I release that, and they're like, oh my God, what did you just do? You know what I mean? Because they can feel that effect, from the way that the costal muscle, the costal thoracic runs down from the rib cage into and entwined in the.
Larry Nassar performed osteopathic manipulation, which involves the use of hands to move a patient's muscles and joints with techniques that include stretching, gentle pressure, and resistance. Nassar maintains he was performing legitimate medical procedures, although it seems there is more to that.
Sacrotuberous ligament,
So when you're doing that, and you said you look for the release, what are you feeling? Like, what does...
You feel tissue tension.
Okay.
Tissue tension changes. It's all about tissue tension. Right? And so you're trying to, like if I pull on one part, like you can see how that affects another part.
Right.
So it's the same thing like a run in the pantyhose or something like that. Like one pull here can affect, and we talk about triplaning and fascial releases where, say if I rotate, extend, and back, that like wringing out a towel. So there's, you may have to go clockwise, counterclockwise. I always talk about the different vector forces to make the effect above. So it's a three-dimensional, I call it triplane, but like a three-dimensional effect to it, because it's not just that simple. So.
Gotcha. Okay.
Larry continues to blabber. At this moment, he seems comfortable since he knows that his position as a doctor can hardly be questioned by anyone, let alone the detective.
Now, how long have you been doing this technique?
I have video from 30 pounds ago, from like the 1990s. I'm trying to remember. It would have been in the 1990s. Like early 1990s.
Right.
And I've made videos very clear. And I've lectured. Oh yeah, and I've lectured.
Are those online anywhere?
They're on my G drive, like I said, that I've sent. You guys should have all of that.
Dropbox or something?
Yeah, it might have been Dropbox
then. Back then,
yeah,
a few years ago.
Yeah.
So how would a patient be laying to get that treatment?
Prone, and then they're lay prone, and then you're doing that. And then I can do it seated. I talk about doing seated. I can do it standing. I can do it supine. So, yeah, you can do but
Would they be on their side?
On their side?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can do it on the side, too. Like I show them in all the different directions, but it's rarely on the side. It's more, if I'm doing something on the side, that's more for the SI joint. That's the SI joint.
What's the SI joint?
Sacroiliac.
Okay.
Right here. So that's where I might be like lifting. You actually sometimes like lift the hemipelvis.
Okay. And so where on their body would you touch
your
them?
Here would be, if your hands are like this, you could be actually holding that, like this would be up towards the back and this would be up towards the pubic symphysis, and you could be like a U shape, and you can lift and shift from that position on the sideline. Generally, with the sideline, that's the lift and shift, and the coccyx. If there's a coccygynia, problem, then sideline. Can be treated sideline.
Detective Andrea Munford asked Larry mundane questions like if his treatment procedure would apply to a patient while they were on their side. She does this to get Larry to feel as comfortable as he could. Larry thinks his in-depth explanations will help him shake off the detective.
Right, but you wouldn't, like if somewhere on the side, you wouldn't be doing the same.
There'd be an alteration. There'd be a variation. You got to adapt, just like standing. You know what I mean? So you change it because of the three-dimensional vector forces. Depending upon what position they're in, it's going to have a different effect. So normally you try it one way. If one way doesn't work, then you try to seat it. You know what I mean? Because of the way that you can affect. And I try and teach them if it works. I've taught a lot of patients how to do it themselves.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like self-treatment. I told them it's like giving themselves a hand wedgie. It's like reach and pull. Like you're picking a wedgie, you grab, and then you pull off to the side, or you pull front, or one of those three main vector forces is.
Okay. Would this ever involve like digital anal penetration?
The detective asks Larry an accusatory question but passes it off as just another question. According to the United States Department of Justice, digital penetration is sexual penetration and can constitute rape.
Only if we're doing a coccyx, problem. You know what I mean? So if there's a fractured coccyx or a coccyx disorder too, so that you can come perianal because it comes up. You have the pelvic floor attachments, but you can come to the pubic symphysis and also towards the coccyx. So it's your lift, I call it the lift and shift, when you're doing that, so that's a very common to do one side or the other, and that's the straightforward. So like if you're here, here, or here, there's 3 different vectors, and that would be the straight vector. Like if I'm doing ribs a lot, then I would be going straight.
Okay.
Larry is aware that digital penetration without consent is a crime and maintains that he only performs the procedure when necessary. Nevertheless, he continues to explain how it is done even when not prompted to do so. The reason he does this is to show that whatever he does is always in a professional manner.
Well, the reason I'm asking is that we did have another complaint.
Really?
Yeah. And it's a patient from a while ago.
Okay.
And she does describe some things that sound to me like they're out of the norm from your typical treatment.
Okay.
This would have been in...
Wow, okay.
And she was receiving some of that type of treatment, but then there were also some other ways that she was touched that she could be on the treatment.
Okay.
So that's why I'm asking about, penetration.
Only if there'd been coccyx, and I would have, and it would have been, because you can push hard. There's a lot of room down there, but I wouldn't have gone intra-rectal. You know what I mean? Like unless I was purposefully treating the coccyx itself.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
What would you use to do that? Like what digit or what part of your hand would you use?
Well, normally I'm using my thumbs. As I'm coming up this way. You know what I mean? Then if I actually have to fix a coccyx, then I'm going to be using my finger inside and my thumb on the outside.
Okay.
The physiotherapy of the pelvic floor, or gynecological physiotherapy, is a branch of physical therapy that aims to assess, treat, improve, and prevent changes that may occur in the pelvic floor, both men and women. In some rare cases, it involves the manipulation of internal vaginal soft tissue.
Do
To
you wear
manipulate
gloves
the
when you do
coccyx.
that?
If I'm going to go intra, yes. You know what I mean? So.
Larry stutters as he answers whether he wears gloves when he performs the procedure. Nonetheless, his answer suggests that he does not wear gloves at certain times. This is against protocol since a doctor is always required to wear gloves when performing pelvic floor physical therapy.
This was a long time ago, so I don't know how many of your patients that you remember from back then.
Yeah, I don't, how many patients, right. Yeah, no, I don't remember,
Right.
No.
Well, this is a little bit of a personal question, so I'll just be totally honest with you.
Yeah.
You have these young girls, and they're
Right.
athletes.
But they're usually with their parents. They're usually with their, parents, so that's why I explain a lot.
They're athletes. They have lovely figures.
Right.
They're very cute girls.
Right.
Do you ever get aroused during these exams?
Do I get aroused during the exam?
Yeah, like do you ever get an erection?
Obviously you don't, you know what I mean? So,
is there a reason that you would during an exam?
I shouldn't be getting an erection during an exam.
Right.
Okay.
Well, this is why I'm talking to you about this,
Yeah.
because this young girl and her mother both observed this on more than one occasion during treatment.
That I would get aroused during an exam.
Visibly an erect penis. Not exposed, but through your clothes.
I can't explain that because that should, when I'm working, I'm working. You know what I mean? So.
Larry finds himself in a much more tougher spot than he had anticipated. He struggles to find the words to deflect the allegations being made against him.
I don't.
Well, you can understand why this would be
Well,
a concern.
Yeah.
That you didn't wear gloves.
Right. Okay. But I mean, but I was like doing her coccyx. actually digitalize the coccyx, like for a coccyx treatment.
The words that she used were he anally penetrated me with his thumb.
No, see, that wouldn't have been, see, I would never do that for the coccyx. I would use if I'm going inside, I'm using this. If I'm penetrating, it's not penetrating, it's pushing off to the
So I
side.
penetrated her. Okay. Again, this was some time ago.
Yeah, but I'm lifting up and I mean, it's not going inside a rectum. It's you can get there's a lot of soft tissue there, and you're lifting through there. I would be wearing gloves if and I would be using this finger. Okay, when I'm using my thumbs, I'm lifting, what I mean, to try and separate the tissue and releasing through there.
And this is what you're describing to me is very different than how she's describing her experience.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
That there was no explanation of what you were doing to her or to her mother. And so you can see kind of the consistency from what happened a couple years ago.
Well, no, but okay, but I mean, okay, but I would be, like that's why I have so many lectures and stuff. That's what I'm known for is my education. You know what I mean? So I don't.
Your education to
students.
To students,
right.
But not necessarily
to patients. Well, I try to. Like I am. I'm like, I've never had anyone, what's confusing to me about is, why wasn't there anything said back when I was treating them if they felt that uncomfortable? It's like if I'm talking to the patient...
Okay, put yourself being a teenage girl.
Okay.
Larry adopts a defensive stance and blames the victim for not reacting if he was indeed abusing them. In his mind, unless the patient stops him, he is assuming the patient understands and is consenting.
All right.
Okay.
Most people that are sexually assaulted are very uncomfortable. They don't know what to say.
Okay.
They're in a position where they feel.
But the parent was right there. You said the mom was there?
She was in a different part of the room. She couldn't observe.
It's an exam room, a different part of the room. It's the same room.
Behind where you were.
Okay.
But I don't think that really the focus is why is it being brought up now. I think
I'm just trying to think of what
it has been brought up, that there are
right.
discrepancies in what she's telling me as compared to the technique that you're describing.
Well, yeah, but I'm trying to think of, this is trying to think of what I would have been doing differently. That's a long time ago, for me to remember everything. But there would be, like I said, what the discrepancy would be is I'm using my thumbs, that's not a discrepancy, to release around the coccyx, okay, where I'm actually lifting, okay, so that's what I said, if I'm treating through sacrotuberous and not the actual, because I'm trying to release the tissues that come up to attach there, so I am pushing hard, okay, with my thumbs, okay, and I'm separating. Okay, so if you have thumbs over there and you're separating, but I'm not going in, if you're going inside you're going to be using your finger, okay, not your thumbs, and that's consistent with what I'm saying with what she said. So if I'm saying yes, that I'd be using my thumbs, how's that inconsistent?
Well, if your fingers, and pardon me, gesturing, are doing some type of.
But my fingers are up here. My thumbs are at the coccyx.
Well, that's not how she's describing it. Now, your fingers are vaginally penetrating her.
What?
And then your thumb anally penetrated her.
No.
So I don't see where that falls in line with that technique.
Right, and I don't see how that would be accurate.
More than once. More than one treatment.
I'm just working the floor, but I would not be, how would I be putting my thumb and fingers, like that? That would not be correct. I am.
The detective starts asking Larry specific questions, and so far, it seems to be paying off. Larry denies penetrating his patients, and this will prove vital in his prosecution.
Now, if there's some type of treatment where she's on her side, would you have any reason to touch her breast?
If I'm treating ribs, so if I'm treating ribs, that must have been, like I said, I would have been pushing and touching ribs, okay?
How would you touch her breast to do the ribs? Demonstrate on yourself.
Right, you're moving the tissue out of the way. You're moving the tissue out of the way to try and get down between the breast and the rib, Okay, so you're lifting and shifting again because you're moving the tissue out of the way. So if I'm moving tissue out of the way, I got to get down to where where I'm making contact, with the rib. Okay, so you try and move and adjust. Okay, or the same thing here. If I'm on the head coming down, you're pushing down, or if you're off to the side, you're pushing off to the side. But there's ribs that are underneath that area, so you're trying to slide through and across.
Okay, that makes sense.
Right.
But this girl saw you 5 times, and all 5 times there was something that, with her knowledge of what that treatment was, because she had some knowledge of it, went beyond that. The touching of her, the digital penetration of her anus, touching of her boob, and she could visibly see at that time that you had an erection, that you were aroused. Okay, she describes your.
You will notice Larry is sitting on the edge of his seat. This tells that he is anxious and starting to feel cornered.
Demeanor, your behavior, your physical reactions, and being able to see an erection. Okay. So, I know it was a long time ago.
Right.
I'm here to get your side of the story because this is very concerning.
Well, yeah. I mean, I try my best to be appropriate, professional, you know what I mean? And I have no understanding of why that would be occurring, okay? Like, I'm male, you know what I mean? But
has it ever happened in an exam or treatment before?
you are, I'm focused on my treatment, you know what I mean? I'm not trying to gain any type of sexual pleasure out of working with my patients, okay? I mean, that's what you're trying to ensue or whatever.
That's what I'm asking you.
Right, and I'm saying, no, I don't get sexual pleasure out of working with my patients. That's not what being a physician is, not what I'm about, okay? What I'm trying to do is release tissue and work through them, but I'm not trying to get my jollies out of this, okay?
So explain to me, like, when you're doing an exam, is it physically taxing on you?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Manual medicine is physically taxing, yes. You know what I mean? There is no question about that. You know what I mean? Because you're moving body parts and you're pushing and you're really, and for me it's a lot of cerebral where I'm trying to visualize where the fascia is going, and pushing and moving. Okay, so I mean, I'm working my best to try and allow that treatment process to occur, and you're really trying to feel what's happening in the tissue. Okay, and yes, you're moving tissue out of the way. You're pushing in and separating. Okay, and you're trying to feel with one hand you're pushing, with the other hand you're monitoring to sense what's happening at the other end, and then you can compress and mobilize, but so I could see how people could feel, because there's a lot of tissue and I'm separating, but I'm trying to explain things while I'm doing things. Are you okay? Does that make it feel better? Like when I push them, like, does that feel better? Is that helping? You know what I mean? Am I pushing too hard? I'm constantly discussing that with them. You know what I mean? Like, does it help?
What would you say prior to doing this treatment?
What would I say prior to doing the treatment?
You're at a doctor, someone that you trust, and all of a sudden, his fingers are essentially in your vagina, and with no explanation.
I would have explained it. I don't understand why she said I didn't explain it, because I always explain, okay, now you're going to feel like pressure.
But you didn't explain it 2 years ago.
Yes, I did.
I mean, 2 years ago, she reported pretty quickly after it happened. She's not going to forget that she received an explanation.
Nassar is accused of digitally penetrating one of his patients' vagina without prior notice. According to a statement from the American Osteopathic Association, intravaginal procedures do happen, although they are not common and are often an extension of osteopathic manipulative therapy. Furthermore, in most cases, patients are clothed during the procedure. It's not clear which exact procedure Nassar may have been performing.
But I do explain. You know what I mean? That's what I'm saying is, like, that's I'm like, okay, I'm putting pressure, compressing, separating, you know what I mean? Like, I'm going to, my hands are going to be pressing on you here, and I'm going to be pushing off to the side, or, if this hurts, let me know, but I'm treating it and just talking at the same time. You know what I mean? So as I'm going through it, it's not like I sit and explain everything to start with and then go do it. I'm talking through it too. You know what I mean? It's like, how does that feel? I'm getting real-time feedback from them. Okay, so as I'm doing it, like, you know, is this hurt? Are you okay? You know, is that feeling better? Okay, so it's not like it's a dead silence and I'm just doing things. You know what I mean? I'm constantly talking, you know, with them to get feedback. Okay, did they say anything about that? You know.
Some of his victims would claim that even when they told Nassar what he was doing hurt them, he would continue doing it regardless. He failed to explain the procedure before performing it, and many said the treatment was never listed on their medical charts.
But that's what I do. I'm constantly talking. You know, does that make it feel better? Make it feel worse? And I'm adjusting based upon that.
Would there be a situation that you wouldn't wear gloves during an exam like that?
If I'm, you know, like, I will wear gloves if I'm actually like manipulating the coccyx. You know what I mean? Because you're going into rectal. You know what I mean?
What if you're going vaginally or even just outside?
Well, if I'm just outside, no. You know what I mean? Yeah, I even say that on the thing. You know, as long as you're staying external, you know what I mean? Because you're external, okay? And you're sensing, you're using to push, to lift and shift. You know, because you're staying. You know what I mean? Like you're staying lateral to that. So you're pushing in central and then lateral. Okay. So, but you know, so if you have like the vagina here and you're coming here pushing, you can see how you could, you know, like feel, or they may have as a teenager having that sensation, but I'm not going intravaginally. I'm going extravaginally, but pushing in through the pelvic floor. Okay. So this is the pelvic floor. You know what I mean? You're here and coming over. There's tons of room there. Okay. And so that's what I'm saying is like, that as I'm doing that, I'm asking them, you know, are you okay? You know, am I pushing too hard? You know, is this hurting? You know what I mean? Do you feel better up there? Am I monitoring hand?
Do you ever ask them if it feels good?
Feel better or worse? You know what I mean? Does that feel better? You know what I mean? Are you doing okay? It's always better, you know, because I'm trying to see, okay, do I need, remember I said about the different adjustments, because do I need to go this way, or that way? It's based upon how they're responding and how I'm sensing the release, because I can sense the release, but I can't sense their pain. You know what I mean? And are you okay? You know what I mean? That's the thing that's very irritating to me, you know, is that if I'm asking the patient, you know, for feedback while I'm doing it, that's how I always feel like I'm okay, because I'm like, are you okay? Are you okay? You know, like you're talking in real time, you know, with them. Okay, am I pushing too hard? Is this hurting? You know, like this, because you know, you don't want to push too hard to hurt them. You know what I mean? So, you know, does that feel better? Feel worse? You know what I mean? And then they respond. You know what I mean? I hope. You know what I mean? So, but that's what is frustrating to me, is trying to get an understanding of why there was that lack of communication. You know what I mean? But when you're talking to them in real time, you know what I mean? Like I'm asking their feedback.
But in a situation where you weren't talking and they didn't know what you were going to do to them because they had no prior explanation, I mean, would a girl that young speak up?
When you're trying,
if she's wondering if she's not feeling okay, but she thinks it should be okay, and thinking about it later, then she realizes that it was not okay with her. I mean, there's lots of reasons why people don't speak up.
I can see that, you know, but
and then seeing that you're erect and feeling on more than one occasion and feeling very uncomfortable.
Yeah, well, it'd be nice if I had, you know, whatever. I mean, I can't speak for her, but if the parent also and her felt that, it'd be nice if there was some communication where I'm asking for communication. You know what I mean? So, but that's...
We can't go back to having that, but this situation as it is, I mean, there are some things that, even to me, hearing you explain it one way and hearing how she explained receiving the treatment was very different.
You know, I mean, trying to explain it, you know what I mean, the best that I can.
Right.
You know, I mean, I'm trying.
But for her, she very vividly, you've done it hundreds, maybe thousands of times.
Right.
Her, she done it 5 times, and it's very vivid to her.
Okay.
How she received what you presented as treatment, what she felt very different as.
Okay. And did she ever make any I would assume not, otherwise I would know, like concern, I mean, like, did I ever like ask her something and say like, does this hurt, and then not adjust it or not listen to what she was saying, I mean, like the feedback, would I respond to her feedback, and was she telling me she was getting better? Well then, yeah, I mean, because that's how I'm asking, like for feedback. I want to know, I mean, am I helping, am I not helping, I mean, and that's, and it's made, like I said, even with, be able to continue standing and walking and doing our job, I mean, it is very personal, I mean.
And it's also received very different when you're doing it on someone from the medical profession who has a lot more knowledge of what you're going to do.
Right. I can't talk about something I don't know the situation. I mean, like from that long ago. But that's what I try. I do this all the time. I talk to people. I'm trying to get feedback, and I'm trying to go off of their feedback. And there's like this trust too on my part of that. I'm trusting them to tell me if I'm hurting them, if I'm pushing too hard. Are they getting better? You know what I mean? Like that's part of the only way that I can really know, what I mean? It's like, is by having the feedback, what I mean? And I hope they said that I was asking them and trying to ascertain how their comfort level is, what I mean?
In some ways.
Because that's, the last thing I want to do is hurt someone, what I mean? And so if you're concerned because you're in their private area and you're asking them questions, and if they're not giving you the feedback, then how do you know that if you're saying, am I hurting you? And they say no, then how do I know that I'm hurting them? You know what I mean? And I'm trying to be realistic with them, what I mean?
Amanda Tomashow told police in her interview that she did tell Nassar to stop touching her private area, but he continued. She told them that she had to literally stand up and push him off. Larry blames his victims for not speaking up if they felt violated.
And I understand that in a treatment, but in a different situation, and I think what concerns me here is the visible signs of your arousal, where this young girl is afraid.
Well, I don't want people to be afraid, obviously. And I was trying to, with my patients, I'm trying to actually help them, not hurt them. Okay? You know what I mean? That's the bottom line, I guess you could say. You know what I mean? Is that's my goal. You know what I mean? Is to help them, not to hurt them.
And so, just to clarify, you're saying that during these treatments where you're dealing with young to old teenage girls who are very physically fit, very attractive, that you don't get aroused when you're touching. I mean, you're essentially touching their genitalia, touching their breast. I'm not purposely trying to get arousal from doing any treatment. I mean, come on. You know what I mean? I'm not purposely trying to gain some type of sexual gratification out of doing that. That's not what I'm doing. Okay, if there was arousal, it's. I mean, like it would be because of whatever. I don't know, but I'm not trying to. I don't know. Well, I don't know. When you're a guy, sometimes you get an erection. You know what I mean? But I don't. That's. You get an erection when you're aroused.
But you know what I mean. Like I'm just saying that I'm not trying to.
Larry does not deny having an erection. He only states that it is inappropriate to have an erection at work. This implies that at least on one occasion he had an erection while treating his patients.
How do you say this? And if I had an erection, I understand why I would have an erection from doing the treatment, you know what I mean, from what I'm doing, okay? And that's rather embarrassing, you know what I mean? It'd be rather embarrassing, okay? I mean, to have that happen, okay? So it's just like, that's not appropriate, okay? And that is just not professional. You know what I mean? I don't know how else to explain it, but that's, yes, you're a guy, but I'm trying to not, and yes, they're young ladies, but I'm trying my best to be professional. You know what I mean? That's why I'm talking with them too, is I want that feedback. I need that feedback, because if I don't, then how do I know that I'm hard? If I'm in their area and I'm talking to them and asking them, you know what I mean? It's constantly asking them, you know what I mean? Like, then I feel like, okay, they're giving me the positive feedback. If they're not, I adjust, you know what I mean? So how can you not, if someone is telling you you're okay, how do you know you're not okay? I mean, like, if you're getting real time, are you okay? Is this helping you feeling better? Okay? And then if they say, so, if I'm not getting that feedback, how do I know that I'm not, but then they find out that I'm hurting them, that's bad feedback. That's not what, what I'm...
Do you do a similar adjustment or technique on male teens?
Yes, exactly. Whether they're male or female, it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? It's the same thing, because you're still having to treat the sacral tuberous or what have you. Yes. I mean, whether it's a male or female. Okay. Yes, and it's just what can I say? The thing that is most frustrating is that the amount of conversation that I'm trying to have with the patient to try and prevent this from happening, okay, is important. And if I'm asking a patient, does this hurt? Or is it helping? You know what I mean? And they don't tell me the truth. How do I know then that I'm hurting them? Mm-hmm. When I'm doing this real time, you know what I mean? Like, I want that feedback, and I adjust based upon the feedback. Mm-hmm. Okay? And I think that's the part that I'd like to, have some information about. You know what I mean? It's like that's the whole protective mechanism, so that I'm not harming someone, mm-hmm. So that there's real-time feedback.
Right.
Okay.
I understand what you're saying about the feedback, but I think there's a difference between physically hurting someone and then them feeling touched inappropriately.
Right, but
and I think that's a different scenario of a comfort level to give feedback.
But that's hurting, though. But that's hurting. Mm-hmm. If you're doing something inappropriate, that's hurting. That's not helping. You know what I mean?
Well, hurting mentally. But it may not be causing them physical pain to give you physical pain feedback.
Nassar knew that he was hurting the girls. He also knew they were unlikely to speak up against his procedure since he was a popular and trusted doctor at the time.
Yeah, but there's a comfort level. If you're doing something and you're asking them.
Have you ever had someone do something that made you feel uncomfortable and you doubted saying anything?
Not, like you mean like.
Anything. It doesn't have to be physically. Anything where you thought, I don't feel right about this.
Yeah, you get your gut feeling. Yeah. I see what you're saying.
And your instinct was probably correct.
Your gut. Well, but that. I don't know. I'm just saying, yeah, you have your sense, everyone has like a sense about them, but.
I was going to give you a business card and I realized that I don't have it. I'm going to go grab one and give you a moment to think and see if you have any other questions for me.
Yeah, I want to know what's going to happen. I'm very.
I think similar to last time, obviously the university has to be notified. I have no control over that.
Right.
So I'm sure there will be conversations with your dean or whoever, however that looks. I'm sure you're familiar with that process. We don't get super involved in those processes. But, and then I will continue to investigate.
Okay.
There will be other witnesses to talk to, things like that.
Okay.
And so like last time, there will be an investigation.
Right.
Okay?
Okay.
All right, I'm going to go grab a card just so that you can have my information. I'll be right back.
Okay.
After the detective leaves the room to get her business card, we get a glimpse of a worried and frightened man. Larry sits alone in the interview room, pondering for several long, silent minutes. He sighs, puts his head down, and sits completely still as he waits for Detective Munford to return.
read over their business card. So before I forget, I'll give you one of those as my email,
Okay.
and also the phone number that I left for you.
I don't know how to explain it more than what, I mean, like, I can't go back in time and remember that far, okay? But I'm telling you, honestly, it is, I'm trying my best to help the patient. I'm trying to get real-time feedback from them, okay? And I've helped so many people, it hurts my brain to think that someone would, as I'm talking to them, I just don't get it, because I'm trying to prevent that. I don't want to hurt someone, so I'm trying to get real time. Am I helping? Am I not helping? And I try and adjust based upon what they're saying. And so it's hurtful for me to think that I've hurt someone. That's just not who I am. Okay, and I'm trying my best to figure out how I didn't read the situations, because that's, you're trying to assess comfort level, too, and
Immediately, Detective Munford re-enters the room. Larry starts defending his actions. He acknowledges that the girl who filed a report might be hurt, but that it was not his intent to do so. Larry realizes that his situation has become worse and appeals to his good nature.
I obviously offended her, there's no question, and that's not good, and I don't want to offend anyone, that's not the intent, that's not the purpose, and I'm trying to do the feedback to know if I'm making a difference or not, and so I usually leave feeling good because I'm helping someone,
What would you say if I told you that there may possibly be other complaints?
I'm doing this treatment a lot, so,
But why would there be those consistent complaints?
You work down there a lot, if I'm working there a lot, okay, what's gonna...
But if repeated girls are saying that you're not explaining the process and that...
But I feel I'm explaining the process. They may not be understanding it, but I think I was explaining the process. If I'm explaining it and they're not understanding it, then you would expect that they ask for more information.
Have you had other complaints from patients?
No, just the one, I've had to explain things to patients,
But if they afterwards said, I feel like you invaded my space, that I violated...
No, nothing like that.
Okay. About how many times do you think you've done this procedure?
It'd be thousands, over the years, because it's been a long time, that I've been doing it, so, like I said, I lecture on it, and it is invasive, and I'm trying to explain things, and that's what bothers me, is that, if I'm talking to people and asking them, for their feedback, and if I'm getting feedback that says it's okay, then it's okay, it's like I'm asking permission, am I pushing on you too hard, is it hurting, and I'm adjusting, and so that's the concern that I have, is so this is just, it hurts me to think that I'm not, that by talking to my patients and trying to interact with my patients, that I'm saying one thing and they're telling me something, but they're afraid to tell me the truth. And that's hard, okay? That they're afraid to tell me the truth. It's like, well, what's, just give me the feedback, and I adjust. That's the whole thing, is getting that adjustment. That's what hurts. It's like, because it's like blindsiding someone. It's like, if you're doing this and you're doing it for good to help someone, and they're giving you the positive feedback that you're helping them, how do I know I'm hurting them if I'm getting the positive feedback that I'm helping them? And they're telling me that. Like you said, she said, yes, it feels better, but she then wasn't feeling better. So how do I know that? Unless, so if you...
I think emotional pain, though, is different. And I think you keep talking about helping the physical pain, the cause that brought her there.
Right.
But emotionally, she's not getting help from this, maybe getting some physical, because you are doing in part the treatment. Her pain is somewhere else.
Well, yes, I mean, if she thought that I was being inappropriate, I could see how that would be painful. You know what I mean? And I don't want that. You know what I mean? That's what I'm trying to be. You know, you can explain something and then go ahead and treat it. But if you're actually talking to them while you're doing it, it's better than, in my mind, than saying, you know, that, because I'm trying to get real-time feedback, not here's what I'm going to do, then I go do something different. If I'm actually touching the patient and asking for feedback while I'm touching the patient too, you know what I mean, that allows for, in my mind, more, you know, like feedback. Then here's all the information, then you stop the information and you go do it, and then you don't get any feedback.
So if a patient stopped you and said, this feels inappropriate.
Yes, then of course I would adjust. I'd say I apologize and I'd try and explain more. Okay? You know, this is what I'm doing, this is the reason why, you know what I mean, that I'm doing what I'm doing. Okay? So you're gonna adjust and explain. You know what I mean? So yeah, if anyone says that it hurts or, you know, I feel uncomfortable, you know, then I say, okay, let's try a different way. You know what I mean? Let's do this and I'll explain this, you know, to them. So, you know, I've done a lot of work with, you know, like I'm trying to also, like, if there was patients that I think needed more, I use a pelvic floor therapist. You know, it's like if they need that type of help, I have a pelvic floor therapist that I'll send patients to. You know, there was one patient who came up from that has, and she had this problem with her. This was just in the past few months, and it's like, you know, you're a peer, aren't you? You know what I mean? Because gymnasts pee a lot. You know, they have weak pelvic floor. You know, and so we're always working like, okay, you got to learn how to use your pelvic floor to squeeze to help with the core. It's like the floor to the core. But anyways, so I was like, you know, you have no tone down here. You know what I mean? Are you a peer? And she goes, yes. And so I had her go to a therapist and gets intravaginal and intrarectal work, you know, the pelvic floor, I mean, intravaginal, not intrarectal, but intravaginal work, and her spasms, her calmness went away, you know, I mean, it like changed again, it made a big difference for her, you know, but that's when I use other therapists to help with that, okay, because that can make a difference, okay, but that's when I use those pelvic floor, the physical therapists that have training in pelvic floor work, you know.
So do you stay in contact with a lot of your patients after treatment?
A lot of my patients, yeah, you know what I mean, over the years, because they'll come back, you know, I'll see them again, and for a different injury, or, you know what I mean, yeah.
Do you initiate a lot of the contact with them?
No, I never initiate, they initiate the contact.
Okay. I don't really have any other questions right now.
Okay. Okay.
What's the best number to call you if I need to?
Let me give you my cell.
Is it what you call? Okay. And that's my information. Like I said, I think that the Dean will probably want to speak with you soon.
Right.
Not something I can control.
Right.
But I may have more questions from you, and then I'll get a hold of you, so I don't have to call your home or your work.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. I don't know what else to say, but I'm not trying to hurt anyone, and I must obviously not be doing a good job of explaining things, and I really feel like I'm trying to real-time explain things, and it's obviously must not have worked. You know what I mean? So, but that's the best I can say, is that I'm trying to get real time, and if I'm offending someone, I would expect that as I'm treating someone, they would say that hurts or that makes me feel uncomfortable. You know what I mean? And then you adjust and say, okay, I'm sorry, let me explain it to you, and you adjust. But if they give you positive feedback, then you think you're doing something that's helpful. But so, all right, well, thank you. I'm sorry. All right, well, have a good day.
Thanks, you too.
Nassar allegedly repeatedly sexually assaulted at least 265 young women and girls under the guise of medical treatment. During his trial, hundreds of women came forward with stories of sexual abuse. The complaints were unstoppable. And they were not just targeting Larry Nassar, but the system that had allowed the doctor's actions to go unpunished. The investigations against the doctor were accelerated and allowed to uncover not only charges of sexual abuse, but other related ones that also spilled over to American Gymnastics, and that put the former doctor on the ropes. In July 2017, Nassar was brought before a Michigan court upon being charged with possession of child pornography. It was in a trial in which 3 parallel charges were dealt with. On December 7, 2017, Nassar received a 20-year prison sentence for each of those charges, for which his sentence was increased to 60 years in prison. On January 16, 2018, the trial began on the complaints of sexual abuse of more than 100 athletes, although the number of women and even some men who made their cases public was increasing with the passing of the days. Nassar knew what awaited him. During the trial, he tried to avoid facing the women who accused him, and even read a text of repentance that failed to soften the judge Rosemarie Aquilina, responsible for the case. Moreover, Aquilina allowed not only the testimony of the woman who had denounced Nassar, but also that of those who had declared that they were victims of the doctor but who had been overcome by fear when denouncing him. A total of 156 women testified against the defendant during a week's trial. On January 25, 2018, Nassar received a conviction which was added to the previous case, between 40 and 175 years in prison. 3 of the victims of Larry Nassar's sexual abuse did not want to make a joint complaint and took their cases separately. On February 2, 2018, that trial began, in which even the father of 3 of the victims of the entire scandal had to be stopped by security when trying to attack the accused. On February 5, 2018, Larry Nassar was sentenced to between 140 and 360 years in prison. There are wounds that will surely never be able to heal, but with the final sentences and Nassar in jail, the case was defined at the judicial level. Of course, the American gymnast still had a pending account with USA Gymnastics, their national federation, who during the case tried to remain oblivious as much as possible to the actions carried out by their doctor. Larry Nassar was not the only focus of the gymnast's complaints. Many of them also sued USA Gymnastics for having covered up the scandal. Thus, the federation fought to defend its image, and with it, that of its president at the time, Steve Penny, and that of coaches Martha and Bella Karolyi, who led the national team in Nassar's years of service. Up until now, Simone Biles and Aly Raisman have not ceased in their efforts to seek full justice. They want all workers and federative members who knew the situation and looked the other way to pay for it. Biles has publicly asked USA Gymnastics on several occasions to launch an independent investigation to clarify the responsibilities of all those involved. Raisman has insisted that the Federation release all the documents it has on the case so that they can be analyzed by the courts. It remains to be seen if the United States Gymnastics Federation takes a step forward to fully clarify the case Larry Nassar, the doctor responsible for destroying the lives of more than 200 young people. Larry Nassar is currently serving his time in the Coleman II U.S. Penitentiary near Orlando, Florida.